So when we start to add other pieces to our models, like things like the shoelace, you have to break it down and think about what kind of shape is that shoelace going to be. So the shoelace itself, in real life is going to be one long strand that's going to be wound back and forth across the shoe. But it doesn't make sense for us to build it like that in 3D. So what we're going to do is just build the parts that we can see, which is the parts that are kind of crossing over each other. And if we think about that, it's kind of a flattened shape. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a primitive again. And let's just start with a NURBS this time. And let's use a NURBS torus. So NURBS, we're going to be able to get something that we won't have to smooth. It's already kind of smooth. And we can work with something fairly low res and get the shape that we want pretty quickly. So with our NURBS torus, let's go ahead and I'm just going to increase the radius. And let's take down the height ratio a bit. So maybe something like that. And if you want to kind of move it down, I'm going to get it kind of a roughly the size or width that you want, and you can change that via the radius. So if we want something that is maybe a little bit more, sorry, not the radius, the height ratio. So if you want something that is a little bit more thick that you can read from a little bit further away, you can increase that that height ratio. All right, so I'm going to get it in a rough position. Now right now it includes all this geometry down here as well. So in addition, it's also a sort of donut shape, which we don't necessarily want. So the first thing I want to do is I want to manipulate the shape of this. We do this on a NURBS object by right-clicking and going to Hull, and then we can select this sort of cage edge here, this hole. Let's go to Scale, and I'm just going to scale this up to kind of flatten out the center. Now let's do the same thing on the outer hole. Kind of flatten this out a little bit, so it's something more like that. All right. We can go ahead and push this down. And now at this point, if we wanted to come in and change the width of this, we could just use Scale to do that. And then thinking about this, we don't really need the geometry under here, so we could actually get rid of that. Now we're not going to be deleting faces as we would if we were working with a polygon, but we can detach the surface. So we'll go to right-click and choose Isoparm. And we'll click on that edge right there, because you can see this is thicker right here. That means that it's already got a division right here. Okay, think of NURBS. If you don't remember back to the intro, NURBS is kind of one piece of geometry that's folded in different ways. So it's going to have a seam somewhere, and this is the seam right here, and then you've also got a seam right here. So we'll go here. We'll go to Surfaces, and let's go to Edit NURBS, and let's detach surfaces. Okay, let's grab that other one over on this side, do the same thing, and then we can delete the bottom. So that leaves us with the top part. Now we don't have a lot of resolution over on this side to be able to manipulate, so let's right click and we'll drag an isoparm down here and also down here, and then we'll go ahead and say insert isoparms. Now let's rebuild our surface. Let's just fix up the parameterization. Choose uniform 0 to 1, and we'll choose to keep the CVs, and this will just clean up the geometry a little bit for us. Let's now move this down into position. We want it to kind of extend outside of that opening that we have there, so we'll kind of scale it and rotate it a little bit. Now it's obviously sticking too far up off the surface right now, so once we rotate it into position here, we can right click and choose Control Vertex. We can grab these two rows here, and we'll push them down towards the surface a little bit, and then do the center as well. Okay, so we end up with something like that. All right, now we can choose this and duplicate it, Control D to duplicate, and kind of move it up here. And now thinking about this, we can go ahead and rotate this a little bit so one end is down underneath. And then using our CVs, you can go ahead and kind of pull this up and over. You get something like that. Okay, let's do the same thing over here on this side. So again, we'll duplicate, bring it up. This time we'll rotate it this direction. Okay. And let's rotate it a little bit more and pull it over a little bit. Now we'll grab these CVs, push them down. Grab these and let's pull these up. And just kind of put it in where that hole might be. And then you want to avoid intersections, so we'll kind of push this down a little bit. And here we can kind of pull this one up and over, and then kind of combine that with pushing that down a little bit more so it's not overlapping. Okay, so you can take a look at the kind of the thickness there. And now we just need to repeat this process going up the rest of the shoe. So I'll go ahead and take this guy. Let's duplicate him. And our shoe's going to be kind of sloping up, so we're going to be moving it over and up. We're rotating it a little bit. That'll probably get you only so far, and then you're going to have to go back in with your CVs and just drop that down a little bit. Pull that over. Okay, and then let's do the same thing on this one. Kind of pull this over and down. It's going underneath on that one and then up above here. Just kind of keep it consistent. Just making sure that these kind of penetrate in. Alright, and if you want to, again, you can go ahead and select both of these, duplicate both of those, just to make things go a little bit quicker. As you know, it's going to be pretty much the same. Move it up like that, maybe one more time. And that's just a quick way to get some laces. Now for me, I'm not going to have the loose laces sticking off, and I'm not going to have the bow in there. You could do that if you want. I'm going to have more of a kind of a slip-on kind of thing, and just put another lace right up at the top here in the top, maybe some elastic or something. But if you want to go to the to make the sort of the loops, you can do that with the Taurus as well. Alright, so again, we're not making any geometry that we're not going to see, and we want it to be able to read from far away that there's some laces on there. And I think it does. Okay, so now what we can do is select all this geometry, and we want to manipulate it as one. So we're going to hit Control G to group it into its own group. And now I can move it over, get it into position here, so I can come in from the front view here. It's good from the side view. And now I want to kind of rotate it a little bit. Just a little. Kind of get it into position. You can just kind of use that as a guide. And it's going to be a little bit off since we rotated it, but it still looks pretty good from the front and from the side. And take a back away and kind of take a look at it. So there's some things you might want to do, kind of smooth out these areas on the inside here by maybe taking some of these points down a little bit or in, so it's not quite so thick at the top of the shoe. Okay. We can also, if you want to, since you can kind of see in there, drop some socks in by just grabbing a polygon cylinder, bringing this over. Again, make it pretty low res. Increase the radius a little bit. So we want it to kind of extend into the foot and then come down. So we'll kind of match it up with the proportion of the leg. Okay. Now with our wireframe on, we can go ahead and delete the top and the bottom. And let's go ahead and take the bottom, scale this up so that it sort of takes in, blocks everything from the inside of there, and we could make a special texture for that if we wanted to. So that could be, if we need to have some sort of a sock, if we don't want our jeans to go all the way down, we could use that. Alright, so that's our shoe, and we'll look at kind of mirroring everything over, but once we've got one built, we basically got the other one built. So the next thing that we can do is to start thinking about the face. So for the face, we're going to use a different workflow than what we've used up to this point, which is the box modeling. We're going to start to talk a little bit about edge modeling or edge loop modeling. And so in the next lesson, let's first talk a little bit about the facial topology and how it's going to be different from some of the topology that we've built on some of these other pieces, and then we'll jump into starting to create that face. So we'll go ahead and start that process in the next lesson.